Shalom and welcome to the weekend edition of the Daily Dose of Hebrew. We're still at the beginning of Jeremiah chapter 7, looking today at verse 2b. In our first video, you may remember our last time around. Let's go ahead and maybe go back and remind ourselves a little bit of that. We saw that the word of the Lord, the word which was to Jeremiah from with the Lord, saying, and if you want to look at this video in detail, you can go back to our previous video, stand at the gate of the house of the Lord and proclaim there this word. And now we're going to pick up in verse 2b. So what is Jeremiah to proclaim? Well, let's go ahead and read the rest of this, the rest of verse 2b in Hebrew, and then we'll get started. Va'amarta shema'u davar Adonai kol Yehuda haba'im b'sha'arim ha'ele lehishtachavot l'Adonai. So you remember at the first part of verse 2, we said, and we had an imperative where the Lord said, stand at this location, at the gates, and you will proclaim. In other words, that sort of continued the imperative, and you will proclaim this word. And once again, we're going to have, and you will say. So what do we have here? We have a perfect, it's a perfect consecutive with this ta ending on it on the end, which tells us it's also going to be a 2ms. And this is a cal. But this perfect consecutive sort of continues that force of the imperative, which we saw in the first part of verse 2. So we could almost translate it as an imperative, or actually many translations will not translate it at all because it's a little bit redundant, because we just saw before that, stand there and proclaim this word and say. And you don't actually need to repeat this again, because if you're going to proclaim it, you're going to be saying it. It's sort of like in the New Testament, frequently in Greek, we would find, and he answered and said. Well, if he answered, he said, but the Greek puts both those words in there, and some translations just omit the second one because it's rather obvious, and we'll see that. But anyway, if we take it literally, and you will say, or and say, now here's the beginning of what he's going to say. Shemi'u, hear. So here we have an imperative. This is going to be a 2MP. You see this U ending on it here, this formative, and this is a cal from our verb shema. So here, a very, very important word in the book of Jeremiah. Here, the word of Yahweh. So word of Yahweh, this is in construct form with the makef there, with this hyphen, and it's the word because it's in construct with a definite noun. Yahweh, by being a proper name, is a definite noun, and so the word is definite as well. Here, the word of Yahweh, all Judah. This is to whom he is speaking here, all Judah. In the similar or parallel passage in chapter 26, we find the word all the cities of Judah. And as I mentioned, it might be exactly the same occasion, it might not, but in either case we find the word all the cities of Judah, which seems to give the setting of one of the holy days or holidays where the people were told to go up to the city of Jerusalem to celebrate a feast day. So this may be what's happening with all the people coming in. All the people, all Judah who are entering. Now here we have haba'im. This is an article with a participle, masculine plural participle. You can see the im ending on it right here from our verb. This is a cal from our verb ba or bo, which means to come or to enter. So the entering ones. Now we would translate this with the relative pronoun. Those who are, or you who are entering, something along that. The entering ones in the gate, the ones who are entering in there's your article, well, there's your preposition plus the article underneath it right there, hidden there, and then plural obviously of gate, who are coming in through the gates, these ones, these, so who are entering in these gates of the city, and they're entering in for what purpose? Well, here's our lameth plus an infinitive construct, and this looks like a very complicated verb, and it is, but it's also very, very common, and you've heard me talk about it. You've heard my colleague Adam Howell talk about it a lot as well. The older lexicons used to present this as a hithpalel from the verb shacha, and they would add a hith at the beginning of it, and then these two letters would switch. See these two right here, they would switch by a process they would call metathesis, sort of like castling in chess, where you put one piece on the other side of the other. So and they would say it's from actually this root here. The more modern lexicons today see this as from the root hava, and they call the actual stem a hishtafel, so that all of this part here is actually the prefix of the stem. And this is basically the only verb that exists in this stem, but that's how they would classify it. And in both cases, the final hey would disappear because it goes to an ot whenever you have an infinitive construct. That's something we're used to seeing even in the cal and the other stems as well. So, and it means to bow down, to frequently in the sense of to worship, to bow down in adoration and to worship. So those who are entering in through these gates, in order to worship Yahweh, because to worship takes its direct object with the lamas here. So in order to worship Yahweh. So the Lord is telling Jeremiah to speak and call the people to hear, all you who are coming to worship. So it's pretty straightforward. There's not a lot of variation in any of the translations we're going to see. Let's go ahead and hide our work here and look just briefly at a couple of translations. The Old King James, first of all, and say. So they've actually translated this part. You were to proclaim this word and say, hear the word of the Lord, all ye of Judah. And I put that in parentheses because that's obviously not here. I think the King James actually puts this in italics because they recognize as well that it's not in the text. So it's all Judah, but all ye of Judah, that enter in at these gates to worship the Lord. And then in the NIV, more modern translation, hear the word of the Lord. So they don't even translate this word right here. They just have proclaim this word, and then they start the quote, so they don't repeat this and say. And you don't really need to. Hear the word of the Lord, all you people of Judah. So they've added that, all Judah, in order to understand what that means. All you people of Judah who come through these gates to worship the Lord. So there's not a whole lot else you can do with this translation, and all the major translations are in this direction here. Now, as I said, what is the message going to be? Well, that's a rather astounding thing we're going to find out in our next verse. So check back with us soon as we continue through working through Jeremiah chapter 7 in the weekend edition of the Daily Dose of Hebrew. Shalom.